Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
So Pesachim Daf discusses what happens when different areas, different regions, hold different minhagim, different halachos concerning halachic issues, and somebody is in the place that doesn't keep his minhag. He's got a minhag from one place and he went somewhere else. So there are two, or perhaps three potential concerns. Concern number one is if you hold that something is mutter and you're at a place where they hold that it's asur, they're going to see you doing it, they're going to learn a wrong halacha. Now this same thing could apply if a place has a minhag which is incorrect. They're machmer on something for no reason. Do you tell them to stop keeping that chumrah, or will they make a mistake based on that? So the Gemara is going to bring a number of examples, and that the Gemara has a concept you shouldn't tell people to stop keeping a halacha, even if it's wrong. If they have a minhag that it's asur, you shouldn't stop them, because then they'll end up extending that asur, and then we'll see how far that concept applies. Then the Gemara goes to the other concern, which is machlokes. If you do something with different halachas, different than the local people, you'll end up making a machlokes. How far does that go? Is it limited, and are there limitations in which that apply? We will also say that if you have different halachos that apply to you, to what extent are you or your children allowed to follow your personal halachos? How far does that go? So we begin with halacha which was kept by the people of Chazoi. They took challah from bread that was made from rice. From rice bread they took challah. Now the halacha is you only have to take challah from bread made from the 5 grains, which does not include rice. So they were doing something which is an incorrect chumrah. So this was reported to Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Yosef said you should get a non-kohen to eat that challah from rice bread in front of their face, so they should clearly see that this is not real challah, and it's a mistaken halacha. So Abaye asked Rabbi Yosef, why should he do that? Don't we know the halacha that if somebody has a chumrah, if somebody has a certain halacha, he holds that something's asur, you shouldn't show him that it's mutter, because what's going to end up happening? He's going to end up thinking that, oh, this is mutter, so everything else is also mutter. He's going to end up mattering things which really are asur. So Gemara says that the response to that was, well, that's only true by kusim who don't know, they don't understand the halachos. If you show them that something that they hold is asur, you show them that it's really mutter, then they will make a generalizations to other things and assume that they are also mutter, even though they're not. But by regular people, we shouldn't say that. So Gemara says, okay, but it's not just kusim, it's anybody who's going to make a mistake like that. These people are not b'nei Torah. The people of Chuzai don't know the halacha. If you'll show them that this halacha, that they thought, that challah, that comes from rice bread, they thought that it's asur for Yisrael to eat. You'll show them Yisrael eating it, they'll say, okay, all challah Yisrael is allowed to eat. They'll end up mattering Yisrael to eat real challah, which is for sure asur. So what should we do with Maisa? So the Gemara says, Rashi said this is what we should do. We should check out the people of Chazai, what do they eat? If they eat mostly rice bread, then we should definitely allow them to keep the halacha of taking challah from there, because most of their bread aren't chayav and challah. Most of it is rice breads. If we'll take that away from them, then they will forget all about the halacha of challah taking altogether. So we should have them take challah from rice bread as an extension, as a zecher, to remember the halacha of challah. This is similar to what we do today. We take challah and chutz la'aretz, even though there is no mitzvah of challah and chutz la'aretz. Also, as a zecher, we shouldn't forget the halacha. Now, if, however, most of the people of Chazoi are eating real bread, which is chayav and challah, we shouldn't let them take challah from rice bread, because what's going to end up happening is they'll take challah from rice bread on real challah, on real bread, which is chayav challah, and they'll think that they pattered that challah, and it's not correct. That since rice bread is not chayav and challah, you didn't pater real bread by taking from rice bread, and therefore you'll end up eating bread that didn't have challah taken from it. And also, if you take bread from real bread on rice bread and give it to a kohen, it's not challah, because it was taken on something which was not challah, and therefore the kohen will end up eating challah which didn't have. He'll end up eating bread which didn't have challah removed from it. That will be an isser. Therefore, if that's the situation, we should disabuse them of the notion that such a bread is chayav and challah. Now, we had said before that the halacha that you're not supposed to tell somebody who thinks something is asur, you're not supposed to tell them that it's mutter, that only applies to kusim. That was the statement of Rav Chizda. We've already expanded it, but the Gemara is going to show again how we expand it. And the Gemara is going to have a brisa which brings 3 examples of this halacha, where there was a group or a town that thought something was asur, and people didn't want to show them that it's mutter, and therefore instead of showing them that it's mutter, they stopped doing that activity. So the 3 examples are as follows. Number 1 is the halacha of 2 brothers going to the bathhouse together. So it's mutter, but in a place called Kabul, they held that it was aser. The Gemara later explains that the reason why they held that it's aser is because there is a halacha that a son should not go to the bathhouse with his father-in-law, with his mother's husband, or with his sister's husband. The reason for all of those is that all these men are physically together with a woman that you are familiar with. So by seeing them in an undressed state, it could bring to all kinds of thoughts, and therefore you shouldn't be in the bathhouse together with those. So these people of Kabul, they extended the halacha of a sister's husband, which is a brother-in-law, they extended that to a regular brother in order to safeguard this halacha. So anyway, so they thought that this was aser, and the halacha is that it's mutter. There is no such halacha. Rashi here adds another thought that there's potential concern that since they are together with each other, often if they see each other in an undressed state, it may bring them to an inappropriate relationship. But anyway, this is what they thought, and the children of Rabban Gamliel, named Yehuda and Hillel, they were in this town of Kabul. They went to the bathhouse together, and everybody was very upset. They said, what kind of business? We never saw such a thing in our lives. So instead of teaching them that it's mutter, Hillel went out of the bathhouse and he waited outside until his brother finished. Now, another thing that happened was the wearing of sandals called kordi kusun, which is open-shoed sandals, and there was concern in the town of Biri that they could fall off your feet, and therefore you end up carrying them, so you shouldn't walk with them in the street on Shabbos. So that's what they held. There's not the halacha. They don't fall off your feet that easily, but that's what they held. And Yehuda and Hillel, again, the same people, sons of Rabban Gamliel, went to that town, and they were wearing kordi kisun in the street on Shabbos. And everybody said, what kind of business we never saw such a thing? And again, instead of telling them that it was permitted, they took them off and they gave them to their servants, and instead they walked barefoot. The third halacha is that they are in the town of Akko. They held that it's forbidden to sit on the benches of the Goyim on Shabbos. The Goyim do business. They have markets and they spread out the wares on the benches. If you sit there, it looks like you're involved in a business deal. That is not aser, but the people in Akko felt that it was, and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel did it, and they told him, what kind of business? We never heard of such a thing. And again, he sat on the floor instead of sitting on the bench so that it should not look like what they held was aser is what he was actually doing. So the Gemara asks, these towns, these people aren't kusim. So how come these people went so far out of the way to make sure that they didn't see that you were doing something that they thought which was aser, which is really not? So the Gemara answers that they're like kusim because they don't have Talmidei Chachamim there. They're far away from towns of Talmidei Chachamim, and therefore they're not knowledgeable. And if you'll show them something they thought is aser is really mutter, they'll end up extending the heter further than it's supposed to go. Okay, now on the subject of people taking a bath, who's allowed to go to the bathhouse with whom? The Gemara says that a Talmud should not go to the bathhouse with his Rebbe, unless his Rebbe needs him to assist him in the bathhouse. As far as a son going with his father, Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's mutter if he also needs him again to assist him. Okay. Now we go to the next concern. If you're doing something in a place which is you hold that it's mutter, and you're in a place where they hold that it's aser. And this is brought out to the following story. Rabbi Bar Chana he came from Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, they hold that you're allowed to eat the chelev de ayatra. That's the fats that are outside on the inner curve of the fourth stomach of a cow or a sheep. The fourth stomach is curved. It's stretched like a bow. And there's fats on the inner part of the bow and the outer part of the bow. The fats on the inner part of the bow, in Eretz Yisrael, they hold that it's mutter to eat it. It's not chelev. And in Bavel, they hold that it's also that it is chelev. So Rabbi Bar Chanan came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, so he ate it. So he was in Bavel and he was eating it. And he had visitors. The visitors were Rav Avira Saba and Rabba Breder Rav Huna. And when he saw them, he covered up the ayatra. He hid the fats. He didn't want them to see it. So he went and reported to Abaye or to their father. And he said, look, he's treating you like kusim. He's assuming that you don't know the halacha. He doesn't want you to think that it is forbidden. He doesn't want you to see that he's eating something that you think is forbidden, which is also to do in front of kusim. Now the Gemara says, what about the second concern? Why was Rabbi Bar Chana not concerned that you're not supposed to do something in a place which is different than the local minig. The minig in Bavel was that it's also to eat these fats. Why was he eating it in front of them? The Gemara gives two answers. The Gemara either says somebody coming from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, this doesn't apply, because the people from Bavel will not make a machlokes with him. They know that he has smicha and they do not, and therefore they are subservient to his psak, and therefore that is the one exception to this rule. Anybody going from anywhere to anywhere else would have this problem, but from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, they're subservient, and therefore you won't make machlokes, you won't make arguments. And our second answer is that Rabbi Bar Chana is planning on going back. Halacha only applies to people that are staying. Somebody's planning on going back does not have to keep the halachas of town that he's in, because he's anyway leaving. Okay, now the Gemara discusses how far does a heter like this go? How far can you keep it? So the Gemara says that Rabbi Bar Chana told his son, you are not allowed to eat these fats, not in front of me, and not in front of me. I saw Rabbi Yochanan eating it, therefore I'm relying on Rabbi Yochanan. I'm allowed to eat it when I'm in front of him, and I'm allowed to eat it when I'm not in front of him because I'm relying on him. But you didn't see him; you're only seeing me, so you can't eat it, not in front of me, and not in front of me. Now the Gemara says this approach contradicts a different statement of Rabbi Bar Chana. It's a different statement of Rabbi Bar Chana concerning eating something called sfichim. Now sfichim are vegetables that grow wild during or after the Shemitah year. You're not allowed to plant during the Shemitah year, therefore you can't plant vegetables. Vegetables which are that do not grow unless they're planted can't be found during the Shemitah year because nobody planted them. However, sometimes they grow wild. They grow from grain which drops, or they grow wildly on their own. So the question is, are you allowed to eat those sfichim? Now, it's a big machlokes we're showing him here. Which halacha of sfichim we're referring to? Is it biur, which is the year after Shemitah, or is it the year of Shemitah itself? We'll go with Rabbeinu Tam's pshat here, and we're discussing if you get vegetables which grow wild, you're allowed to eat them or not. So the halacha of that is as follows: they're for sure already. The question is it daraisa or is it darabanan? So machlokes is between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. The Chachamim say it's an issur darabanan. We're afraid people are going to plant it and claim that it grew wild. According to Rabbi Akiva, it's a pasuk. The pasuk says that people are going to complain and say during Shemitah, what are we supposed to eat? So the words of the psukim are as follows. People will say, "Hey, lein Israel, we didn't plant. If lein esav is to us anyway, we didn't harvest." So Rabbi Akiva says he didn't plant and he didn't harvest. So if he didn't plant, for sure you didn't harvest. So what does it mean? You didn't harvest must be referring to things which grew even though you didn't plant them. That's svichim. That's stuff that grows wild. And you see the Torah is telling you that it's usher to eat that. That's why the people are saying we can't eat it, we can't plant, and we can't harvest. Even what grew wild, we can't harvest. So you see, he says, Rabbi Akiva, things which grew wild, you're not allowed to harvest. Now, that's why Rabbi Akiva holds that svichim are usher daraisa. There is, however, one type of wild growing vegetable which is not real svichim, and that is cabbage. Cabbage could grow from year to year. The same plant could stay in the ground and grow from year to year. However, it is a vegetable, and it doesn't grow wild. It grows without you planting it. So it's very similar to other types of svichim. It's not included in the issur daraisa. Issur daraisa only applies to things which you have to plant seeds in the ground every year. This is different. The question is, do we make a gzeira? Do we say that because Kruven are vegetables, like everything else, are easily confused with other vegetables? We make a gzeira that you can't eat them during Shemitah, even though they aren't real sfichim. Do we say such a gzeira or not? So Rabbi Yosi, the son of Reb Shimon, says he saw Shimon bar Yochai eating these things, and he held that these Kruven, these wild sfichim that are cabbages, these are mutter to eat. So the incident that happened was as follows. Rav Shimon, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Bar Chana quotes Rabbi Yochanan ben Elazar, who says that I once followed Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yosi into a garden, and he gave me wild kruven, and I ate it. And he said to me as follows. He said, "You're only allowed to eat this in front of me. I could eat it both in front of my Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and not in front of him, because I saw him eat it. I could rely on him. He's big enough. I could rely on him, whether it's in his presence or not in his presence. You, however, are only seeing it from me. I am not big enough to rely on not in my presence. You can only eat it in front of me, so eat it now in front of me." So this is contradictory, because this quote of Rabbi Bar Chana says that you are allowed to rely on a person who saw something that was mutter in front of him. Not in front of him you can, but in front of him you could. So how come Rabbi Bar Chana told his own son that you can't rely on it in front of me? So the Gemara doesn't answer. The Gemara quotes that this is contradictory, and the Gemara leaves it like that. Okay, that ends this discussion. The Gemara now goes to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah had said as follows. The Mishnah had said that somebody who travels from one town to another, and in one of the towns they were careful not to do work on Erev Pesach before Chatzos, and in the other one they did work on Erev Pesach before Chatzos. So somebody who travels from one town to another has to keep the Chumrah of both towns, and therefore he cannot do work on Erev Pesach. The Gemara then said, and you shouldn't do different than your local town because it makes machlokas. The Gemara says, I don't understand. That means if you're traveling to a town where they don't do work, and you're going to take that chumrah and not do work, then you're fitting with the local town. So that then I understand. But if you're traveling to a town where they do work, and you're taking your chumrah with you from the old town, and you're not doing work, you're doing the opposite of what the locals are doing. How does that fit with saying that you shouldn't do different than the locals because you're going to make machlokas? So Abaye says you're right. We're not referring to that. We're only referring to that somebody's traveling to a town where they don't do work, and he also shouldn't do work, so he shouldn't make machlokas. Rava says no. It's going on both. That case where you're traveling to a town where they're not doing work and you're also not doing work is because you don't want to make machlokas. Even if you're traveling to a town where they are doing work and you're not doing work, you don't have to worry about it, and you can keep your chumrah of not doing work. Why? Because the only problem is making machlokas, but somebody's not going to make a machlokas with you if he sees you not working. He's not going to think you're keeping a halacha that he doesn't hold of. He's thinking you don't have a job. Somebody doesn't have a job. Somebody's not doing work. Lack of doing something doesn't show that he's doing a different halacha than you. It could just be that he has many reasons not to do it. If he doesn't have a job, it's not a reason to make a machlokas, and therefore that concern doesn't apply. Okay, now the Gemara says the following thing. Rav Safra says to Rabbi Abba, you and I both know when the new month begins. We know when Rosh Chodesh is. If we're in a place where they don't know when Rosh Chodesh is, Tosfos points out it's not where they keep Yom Tov Sheni always. It's a place where they don't know where Rosh Chodesh is, and therefore they're keeping a second day of Yom Tov, not again because of minig, but because they just don't know. We do know. Are we allowed to do work? Are we allowed to do malacha on Yom Tov Sheni, since we're not keeping Yom Tov Sheni? Now, in the city itself, for sure we're not going to, because they'll see us working, and that'll be very machlokes causing. The question is, what about in the midbar? If we're out in the wilderness near the city, but within the dominion of that city, can we do malacha or not? As the Gemara says, Rabbi Ami said that you're allowed to in the city, not allowed to, but out in the wilderness.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.